Morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Time to Talk Tuesday. I'm Claire Keeley, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm a funeral celebrant, and obviously this is my page. And today I've got my lovely friend Kay Underdown with me. Good morning, Kay.
Good morning, Claire. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. How are you today? All right. So I'm just getting my just getting my live stream up so I can see any comments that come up on. There we are. We're live on there, right? Okie dokie. So you're okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Should I be able to see the chat? I don't know.
No, that's the thing. We had this before when we were trying to do something on. That's why I've got my laptop and my phone, because it's easier. So
I'm quite happy about that. I'll let you deal with that.
But yeah, I'll if you see my eyes go like that, I'm just checking out the chat to see if people have got any questions and everything. So we've got Ricky with us. Good morning, Ricky, and Helen Parkhurst. So good morning. I don't know if Helen's a friend of yours.
Helen. Yes.
Yeah. There, you've got a fan. And Ruth, lovely Ruth Pennell. She's lovely. She was our guest last week about wills and legacy, life and legacy. So today, I met Kay doing a summit last summer, and it's a mind, body, soul summit. And I was really interested in what Kay was doing. And Kay writes life stories where you support people to write their life stories, don't you? So I'm not going to explain it very well, but I'll hand over to you to do that. But I just thought the whole idea of it, which obviously Kay will explain, fitted really well into the whole living and dying process. So Kay, can I just hand over to you, because you are a life story empowerment coach, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I use now, the title. I've started using that because happiness and empowerment coach was what I use, but what I'm really passionate about is empowering people to tell the little stories of their life and bring them together and use life stories in different ways. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, it just fascinated me, because from the talk and the workshop you did before about a lot of people, you hear about people write autobiographies, or there's biographies of famous people or people who've achieved amazing and wonderful things. Now, we're all amazing and wonderful in our own ways, but most of us are ordinary people. Most of us aren't going to climb Mount Everest. Most of us aren't going to go to the moon. And obviously I've done both, but you know, most of us are going to have what we think is an ordinary life, but actually I don't think there's any such thing. And I know from writing the eulogies that what may seem a very ordinary life is actually really, really interesting. So that's where I thought this is something that people need to hear more about. So can you tell us about some of the workshops you've done and how you get people to be inspired to write about their life and the stories and what you do in those? Because I think that's something that is interesting anyway, but also when we're looking at the life as a whole and the whole process of life, including dying, I think it's a part that we miss. So if you can tell us more about that, please, Kay.
Yeah, if I explain the way in which I work, and I suppose where it came from a bit, I've taken it from all the different experiences I've had in life of writing and creativity, and particularly when I went to university, it was about sense of belonging I did for my dissertation, and that involved workshops where people did do writing or drawing and did a map of belonging. And because I was a life coach before and drawing on my life coach training, the sense of belonging, and writing, because I also did a creative writing course, but the kind of writing I've done over the years has been to do with self-development and sort of journal type writing. I started with like Julie Cameron's Artist's Way, the morning pages. And that's where you just write without thinking about what you're going to write, and you just allow the words to come onto the page. And in that case, it was like writing 3 pages of writing. And I did that for the first time. In the first week, I'd written a poem to my daughter about my daughter that just came from nowhere. And it sort of intrigued me. And so how I get people started is by using timed writing.
Right.
I take that along to my work.
Oh, that's my logo for Time to Talk. That's amazing.
I love these head timers, the coloured ones, but yeah. I use that, and usually I get people to write for 5 minutes, and it could be anything that could be used as a trigger. It could be an object. Like I could share that, right?
What's that? Is it just a little beach
cup?
Yeah.
Right. And I would put that on the table and say, you know, just write whatever comes into your head. And it could be about this, or it could be about something totally different. So there's never any sort of rules on you must write about this topic. You must. That is a starting point or a trigger. And then people write whatever they want to write. But when you first start out, people have had experiences from school, education, or how they use writing in work, having to write reports and everything. And the last thing they want to do is write necessarily. But it's a different kind of writing. It's a way of communicating with yourself.
Yes.
And it's just quite amazing. And people are surprised once they get used to it, in just allowing the words to come on the page without judging what they're saying. And
I think that must be key.
Yeah, because that's when the stories come out. And when you're working together in a group, when people share their stories, the stories that come from that and the conversations, because all sorts of topics can come out just from sharing of one person's few words about something. And they're the little stories. So I suppose I really inspire people to tell, you know, to write or draw if you like
as well. Yeah, that's an interesting.
And sometimes do storyboards, you know, where you can do little pictures. And so you can do a little, I only do like stick people because I can't draw very well, but something that represents.
That's you and Lowry in a former life.
So as long as it means something to you when you put it down, and then you can write a little sentence underneath it. And so you could write a story in 3 little boxes. You've got a beginning, you've got a middle, and you've got an end, and there's your little story. So there's different ways. And then as you go on, then we would actually have homework, give people a theme for homework. And again, they can take it wherever they want. And it's quite intriguing when everyone, they can either have the same theme, write about the same thing, and then you're quite surprised as to where everyone's taken it. Or I started giving like a selection of themes. And so yeah.
So I suppose if you were to say, for example, here's a shell. So, and that's your trigger or your theme. People would have a different idea. Their schema would be, it means different things to different people. So for a lot of people that perhaps trigger memories of happy holidays or unhappy holidays, or a shell beaded curtain at Great Auntie Flo's, or, you know, for example, I've got shells in my bathroom. So for my children, that might be something that they think about, you know, a big conch shell that my cousin brought back from Bermuda. So for me, that would bring stories of him back. So is that kind of how it works, that it's sort of different things mean different things to different people? And so from there, there's this breadth of stories that are memories and stories of things that have happened in different people's lives.
And sometimes what's happening is they're bringing back memories that they'd forgotten about.
Yeah.
Because they're small memories, but they're very special memories. And when you build up, like over a number of weeks, I mean, I actually, before lockdown, I'd been meeting with a small group of ladies who'd attended a course I did a couple of years back with For Ageless Thanet, a local project.
Okay.
And we just kept meeting, and that was the way that I really had the opportunity to see how it was going to work. And I'm actually writing a book that collaborating with them to get this across of the way in which I work, because it's a very straightforward way, and it's getting people over that worrying about whether something's good enough. It's about writing in their own words something, or drawing, and it's what it means to them and how they want to share it. One of my ladies, you know, she made a journal, she'd got a journal, and she used to do some writing, and occasionally she'd say, oh, I'm going to put that in my journal, you know,
Yeah.
different things that can be done. You know, a picture means something. You can collect things and just keep them. So it's whatever's right for you. And just to mention, the group that I was meeting with, the ladies had been affected by bereavement of their husbands, and therefore.
And that was by chance, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah. But it is something that, you know, yes, you will have things that sometimes you write about that bring a tear to your eye or could be sad. But on the whole, I think using the coaching approach, the life coaching approach, it's mainly positive, but it's not ignoring the memories. It's being able to share them in a way that feels comfortable.
In a positive and comfortable way, because everyone's going to have memories that hurt because they're of someone that we've lost, or because it was an unpleasant time, but you still live that and you still lost that person, and they're still valid, and they shape you and make you, don't they?
Yeah.
Because and I know it's really interesting. It sounds so simple when you think about it. It sounds so simple, and there's somebody who writes as a living, really. Sometimes sitting down to write is incredibly hard. You've just got you've got Sue and Jenny watching, and my friend Michelle. Good morning, ladies. And Helen saying, don't call it homework. I did a workshop with Kay. She created a lovely safe space. There was no pressure or judgment, and hearing other people's stories, although nothing special to them, were fascinating and inspirational to hear. And I tell you what, Helen, I couldn't agree more. Obviously, the thing that I particularly write includes life stories, which is obviously my slant on it, and why it interested me in particular was I write the eulogies, and I think pretty much for bar one where the family pretty much wrote it and said, just this is what we want included. Just tidy it up and make it flow better. And I literally sort of edited it, I suppose, and, you know, made it a little bit more creative, and, you know, it wasn't non-articulate, but just made it flow and a little bit more poetic. People sort of, when I ask them, because obviously I sit and say to people, so tell me about your dad, tell me about your wife, tell me what, you know, and sometimes people are falling over themselves to tell you all these wonderful things about people, but sometimes the relative that's left doesn't really know that person, and you have to kind of tease the little bits of details out because you want to say more than the start. They were born, they lived, they died, kind of thing. But the things that people tell you that are probably every day and nothing special to that person in particular are absolutely fascinating. And, you know, even if it's one of their sayings, I mean, there was one chap I did a funeral for, bless his heart, and he loved his scratch cards. And, you know, it was a big part of his, and everybody knew him because he was the guy that did the scratch cards. Now, that sounds, it's nothing special, but to the family, they are always going to think of him when they see or hear a scratch card. And so that's why I thought this would be really lovely for this, because I think people get so hit up with the thought of writing, they've got to write an autobiography or something, but just to collate their life stories, or to collate things that have happened to them, are so precious when they're not there anymore, aren't they?
And so you can do it for yourself. It's doing it for yourself. So it's something you can enjoy. You can enjoy getting pictures together and do it however you want to do it. It could be done in a journal. I've got a board over there.
Okay.
No, I just saw that today and thought, you know,
okay,
put things together in different ways. You know that.
Right. What have you got on there, Kay?
Well, my story behind this is that I was at a lovely weekend in the New Forest. I went into an auction, not an, you know, a antiques and collectors place, and there was a pile of these in a box, and they're just lovely selection of photographs and things that people had collected, and
they're people's
precious.
people's memories. Yeah.
People's memories, and I wish I could find the family that they belong to.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's the thing as well. I mean, I've got a love of family history. So for me, you know, if I'd got, we're very lucky that we've got some of the telegrams and letters that my nan and granddad sent each other, and we've got newspaper clippings and cards and things. And I am a little bit of a hoarder. I do keep things, but you know, and some people are diary writers. Now, if you're, I know Jenny's watching, she's an avid journaler. She journals every day. She honestly, and Sue obviously is a journaler as well. I haven't got the discipline to do that every day.
I'm the same. I'm not disciplined.
You know, and I suppose, you know, in 50 years' time, should my grandchildren want to find out more about Granny Keeley, they'll be able to look at my Facebook and go, what was she up to now? Look, there's pictures of her and granddad and blah, 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 blah. But I think it's always nice to have those little stories written down. And I've really thought about doing this. And it's a beautiful thing to leave as a legacy. And also it's those little snapshots. They're like little photographs in time, aren't they, of what you do. And I think it's a lovely thing to leave for people who you leave behind. But also, as somebody that writes eulogies, this kind of information is really useful. But I mean, I remember we went to a place in Wiltshire called Imber, and it was a place that was taken over by the MOD, I believe, in 1943. And they were told they could go back in 6 months. Well, they've never gone back, so it's like a ghost village. It's on the Salisbury Plains. And there was a book for sale there, and it was this little girl who grew up in this little village. And to her, it was nothing special. It was just where she lived. But her stories about what happened, she was one of the last children that ever grew up there. So the stories of what it was like have become of huge historical interest. And if you think this year we're living through and last year we're living through a modern day plague, aren't we?
Yeah.
You know, like when we talk about the Black Death or the plague of 1666, I think the Black Death was 13 something. You know, you haven't got these sources where now our information is going to be much more used. And someone's talking about digital legacies here. Oh, Jen saying, I think the problem with digital legacy is it's left in the hands of a platform where your own analog is another backup. And I think that's right. It's, you know, what you say. So if someone was thinking about writing their story, their life story, I mean, you straight away you think of autobiographies, but you are talking about little pockets of story that build up a picture of you, aren't you?
Yeah, but you can do whatever you like. I mean, I wrote a book back in 2019, and that was about my experience of having been diagnosed with leukemia. And
wow,
it wasn't so much about the illness, but it was about the way in which I used creativity and writing, and I started blogging. But books are a way that you can capture part of your story. Now, that's not one that I generally wanted to promote or give my family to read, but it was a special book to me, and the purpose of it was to inspire other people to write, that they could write a book if they wanted to, because I've self-published that.
wow.
And just to mention, I mean, I went on a road trip around the UK back in 2017 with my daughter, and it was in Kirkcudbright up in Scotland that I met an artist just for half an hour in his garden, like where he had a garden studio. And since that time, we've remained friends. I was doing a university assignment in Stone Bay, which is a Broadstairs, beautiful place, talking to him over the phone and texting, and he saw my photos on Facebook. And I've now got a book that we created that's got my photos, which to me is part of my memories, because of my time in Thanet. And then he's got art that he's created. And for me, this book is a memory. This is very much a part of, I can relate so many stories to this book of that part of my life. And then in lockdown, we created one on Scotland. And my friend actually Stuart believes that these two books tell his life story. Now, I don't necessarily see it in the same way, but for him, it represents his life.
That's amazing, isn't it? And that was self-published.
This one is self-published on Amazon, so it's for sale. it's available. But with these two, we haven't gone, we've published it, I've self-published it because you can have your own publishing imprint, and we've had them printed, but it's not available online. And
Yeah, it's more for you.
Yeah, you could just have a book printed and not publish it and just have it for your family. There's no reason why you couldn't do that.
That sounds amazing. Is that amazingly expensive, or?
Well, you just for the books, the printing cost, they work out to about, well, for a couple of hundred or something. It depends how many copies. You could get 20 copies.
Yeah,
you're talking about 100 or 200 maybe for the whole.
That's not bad
thing. It all depends. It's difficult to give a price.
The more you print, the less it is, I guess.
Depends on the size and what you want and the cover with how much you do yourself.
Okay, well, that sounds interesting.
But yeah, it's a way of doing it.
Okay, because lots of people do write things, don't they? And I think that would be Sue's saying growth work, which it is, isn't it? It definitely is.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's important to write life stories, to get people to write them down or to record them in whatever way, shape or form? What do you think is the important thing about it?
For me, it's your sense of belonging.
Mm-hmm.
It's the communication with yourself, the enjoyment that you can get from doing it. It enables you to share your stories with others, which is interesting. It's special for those that are close to you. And when you bring people together to talk about the stories, that's for me what is special.
Yeah,
is that
there's something communal, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I suppose as well, what would have once been, I had this conversation with Jen the other day, what would once have been sat round a campfire or around, in a small community, like we're back in the ancestors, an oral history, that storytelling has gone to an extent, hasn't it? So these things, you've always got the raconteurs and the people with the anecdotes. But, people, the more everyday stories can go by the by. And, holiday in, where did I go for holiday? I mean, I took the kids to Canberra Sands for a holiday when they were very little, because I really didn't have a lot of money and it was a cheapy holiday. But I've got the pictures and the stories of some of the funny things that happened, and they won't matter to anybody else, and they're just as standard what happened in the life of Claire, Daniel and Sophie, but the value of them is and I think it must do something for you. Does it make you conscious of living your life more, do you think?
I think it makes your life richer.
Yeah, because I was thinking as well, because are you well with your leukemia now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to be tested every so often, but I feel that, so much has come from, it makes you really value things. And that's
where I was coming from, that it was having looked at having a serious illness. Did you feel that made you think more about recording things, or you were already doing it by the sounds of it, but did that change your views on things a little bit? Because I don't want to be morbid, but obviously when you look at life-changing illnesses, or where you have to sort of evaluate.
It was actually when I came home, when I'd been in hospital for about 3 months, getting on for 3 months.
Oh, gosh.
And then I was in and out of hospital over that year, and I was lucky to survive. But when
sounds
I came
like it.
home and I was restricted as to how much I could do, that's when I turned to blogging, because it was a way of, it's something I'd always wanted to do. I'd always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
And then I'd wanted to do blogging. So I'd always had it in me to want to do some writing in some form, but I've always liked non-fiction books quite a bit. So it was always going to be, I think, something non-fiction-y for me. And then when I started blogging, I realised how good it was for me. It took me into a different world, and it gave me a sense of purpose, so that when I started to go out, I'd take photos so that I could then go back and write a story and share that story. And I was connecting with people, not large numbers, but connecting with people across the world. And it was very special to me. And that's really what made me get more onto the life stories. And then when I was in the middle of my university course at that point. I'd just done a year, absolutely loving it. And then I had a year out with ill health. But when I did my dissertation on sense of belonging, it was the sense of belonging that really made me see the value of people exploring when I say sense of belonging, I'm talking about people, place, memories and nature. Those four things together, when people start exploring them and really thinking what's important to them in their life, and can write stories about any one of those. And quite often I start with people asking people to write about nature.
Yeah.
And it's amazing just from nature what stories come out for different people.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the sea. I love the sea.
Yeah, and I think Jenny's just said, living life in the shadow of a volcano, life goes on, it has to, but chronic illness does give you a perspective. And living life in the shadow of a volcano is one of Jen's favourite sayings. And I know she won't mind me saying that she has health issues that, you know, she never knows when it's going to, you know, cause problems for her. And interesting, she's a really keen journaler as well, isn't she?
Yeah,
she's done workshops in that. But it sounds as though the being ill, and obviously it was already in you because you wanted to write and you wanted to explore that and your own growth. But the writing it down or recording it somehow made you, do you think it makes you see more about how you're going to live your life and push you further to experience more? And because I think that's the thing, we talk about living and dying, but actually they're both the same, because death is part of life, and that's a quote I've used many times. And sometimes it's not until you realize that you are going to die, or you know, when you've been, that you think I'm going to do the things I want to do, and sometimes that's when the really interesting stuff happens, I think, as well. But what do you feel about that?
Oh, definitely. That's definitely so much the case, I think. But the latest thing I've got involved in, which is to do with my writing, but I'm going completely away from, part of it for me is about creating something. But I've just started doing a novel writing course.
A novel writing course? Wow.
Writing course, yeah. And I've never written much fiction. I did a creative writing course for a year, which was part of the Access to University. But the thought of writing a whole book, would I struggle with sort of remembering stuff and everything. But actually, I've ended up doing a story. Originally, it was going to be about my tour around the UK. I've got this Dream Shell project that I have the idea of, and want to do a trip around the UK, real imagined or one day real. Probably didn't quite say that right, but if you get
the Dream Shell, Kay and I talked about the Dream Shell project at some length, didn't we? And it was all the places that you've heard about or have thought, I'd like to go there, and if I've got this right, you would like to write about that as well as visit them. And even if you can't actually go to them, explore them, because you can explore things virtually, and you know, you can talk about it still, can't you?
Oh, so much. When I was doing Stuart's book on Scotland, I was researching online and seeing some wonderful places, and even going onto a Facebook page and seeing the dialect. They were actually writing comments in the dialect, which was, you know, it's just quite amazing. There's some such wonderful places around.
Beautiful, yeah.
But the novel project, I've ended up deciding to write about Brighton, do something focused on Brighton, which was where I was born. And the thing about, I was going through a family album, and I've got a picture of my nan there. I don't know how much you can see that.
Oh yeah, with a beagle or a basset.
It's a little golden cocker spaniel.
Oh right. Oh.
But the thing about that is that I don't know a lot of stories of my nan. I know where she used to work, and I used to see a lot of my nan, but I was younger, and you know, I don't know a lot of the stories from my nan, but somehow I felt like I wanted to use her as a sort of, so I'm going back to Edwardian period. Not that she would have been very young then, but I'm using a character that will sort of be based on her.
Okay.
And partly based on Bridget Jones. But I mean,
So that's inspired by
know.
photographs and what you do
Yeah.
know, isn't it?
But I've been researching Brighton and seeing pictures from my child, you know, of the place I knew as a child growing up, but seeing them in a different way. And I'm enjoying doing it because it's where my roots are, where my sense of belonging is. And so I'm so enjoying it and so excited about it.
Wow.
Trouble is, I think I'm going to end up with a non-fiction book, not the fiction book that I set out to do.
Well, how often do we end up doing what we think we're going to do?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting because you've got the factual side of recording stories, which of course are, you know, from a various perspectives, and they are obviously your story will be different. If we could talk about the same thing that we both witnessed and they'd be different. So everyone's got a perspective, and also you've got then that this is leading you into other projects that are enriching your life, as well as these life stories. So when's a good time to start? Because some people I can imagine are saying, I haven't got anything to write about.
Get your book out and write for 5 minutes now.
That's it, everyone.
Seriously, that's the way to start.
So you would recommend, if people are thinking, do you know, I'd really like to write some things down about my life, not the whole chapter and verse, but I would like to record some of the things I've done. So you can either write about, you could use pictures, you could draw them, even if you're not a super talented thing. So to start, you would recommend doing it, you know, 5 minutes at a time.
Yeah, look around your room.
Yeah.
Pick out one object or photo.
Yeah.
And just spend 5 minutes writing about it and see what comes out. Okay,
so I've grabbed this, I don't know if you can see it, it's a bath bomb duck.
Yeah.
Of all the random things I looked up and it was there. And this, it's the reason I've had it for a while, and it is a duck bath bomb lily flavor smell. And this duck, when I went camping with some friends, a group I'm in, we go on a camp every year, which we really missed last year. Looks like we're going to miss it this year. And our tent we called the hormonal duck tent. And I could write that one item would trigger so many things I possibly wouldn't talk about on here. And there was quite a lot of wine involved and lots of laughter, but that would bring up, that straight away brings to mind 5 really special ladies immediately, as well as the other people that were there. And you know, the things we did, I mean, we, you know, nothing that wild and wonderful. It was just a group of friends camping, but that would be able to do those straight away. And like, I'm reaching out for something else, and that's a sunglasses case, and that I bought when I bought a cheap pair of sunglasses on holiday with my husband and my daughter and her then boyfriend. So that takes me to Norfolk straight away. So I'm just looking around and picking up, what else have I got here? There's lots of camping stuff in here. I must go camping a lot. there's this tin, which I just used the tin. It's actually got dried rowan berries in it, but it's hangover drops.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But it was a tin of sweets my husband's dad brought back from holiday. It's a lot of holiday and camp. It sounds like all I do.
It is, isn't it?
As a joke, some hangover drops. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that makes me think of my father-in-law, who we lost nearly a year and a half ago. So those 3 items, I've got the amount of stories that I've suddenly, and you know, this candle here, my son and his partner brought me back from Vienna from a holiday. So again, it's more holidays, isn't it? Yeah. But it's those little things that make you think of those people when they're nothing on their own. They're nothing special.
But each story is special, and when you start building them up, and then what you actually do with those stories is entirely up to you. But yeah, you'll have a collection that you could put them in a special box, choose a box and put them in a special box, or actually put them into a scrapbook. Anything, whatever feels right for you, make them into a book.
Do you do this for you, or do you do this for your daughter, or is it a mixture of both?
I do it for me. It's about I think we got the BU summit at the
Yes,
weekend,
we have. Yeah, we have. Yeah.
Do it for yourself. If you later want to do something with it that's for other people, then do that. But to start with, just do it for yourself, because otherwise you will be thinking about, oh, is this good enough? Or am I doing it right? Oh, this is no good. No one's going to want to read this. Do it for yourself.
That was one of my other, I was sort of, when I was making notes to talk to you, I was thinking, you know, why would you not want to do it? And as somebody who does write, but I have to say, I struggle to sit down and start. Once I start, I'm off. And I think that is because there's that expectation of getting it right, of writing something articulate and fabulous. And actually, if you, as long as you start with the facts, it usually, as long as you start with somewhere, it usually comes. Even if you then cross out that beginning, you know, if you think actually those first 3 lines I wrote don't make sense, they don't flow, I'm not going to use them in the finished thing, that's fine. But you know, one of the things, what if people were thinking, oh, I'd like to, but I haven't got the time. So I guess you would say, well, just write for 5 minutes, you know, make yourself write for 5 minutes once a day.
Yeah. I mean, with the coaching side, I mean, with coaching, sometimes, you know, to get someone started on something, what I use, I just set a timer for 20 minutes. If I want to do I need to do some cleaning or something I keep putting off, put a time on for 20 minutes, just get started.
Yeah.
And then I can finish when the timer goes. But quite often you find that once the timer goes off, you're into it, you're in the flow, yeah. You just carry on.
Gone with it. And, you know, I was thinking as well, if you've got somebody, you know, people might be thinking, well, when would you do this? And you could do it if you've got, you know, somebody who you know is very poorly. And if they, you know, perhaps you're looking at palliative care, it could be something that people, I mean, my guest in a few weeks' time is a soul midwife. And so that's going to be an interesting conversation with her. She's an interesting lady. I was talking to her on the phone the other day. I've never met her. I found her on Instagram, just got chatting to her. But, you know, I know from doing palliative care myself that people do want to talk. So if you've got somebody who, you know, for example, I mean, unfortunately, cancer is a really big one. Obviously, at the moment, it's COVID, but a lot of people with cancer who, once it gets to terminal, they do want to talk about their life. I mean, I remember sitting with my father-in-law, and he remembered all these wonderful stories about when he was a boy, and the milk being delivered on a cart and horse and cart.
Wow, yeah.
And the milkman used to let him get on the cart, on the horse, on the cart with him. And he was the youngest boy. So he was the 7th child of 8 children. And he used to go up and down this road here, which was a lane, but now, I mean, it's about four lanes wide, and practically dual carriageway. And the horse started moving. So Ben, my father-in-law, went, whoa, like that. Of course, this thing clattered off up the lane, milk churns going everywhere. And I was laughing. I said, what did your mum say? And my father-in-law's family were Irish, and she said, oh, Brendan, put a curse of hell on you, you know. And he came out with that, and I'd never heard him talk like that. And I think there's something, do you think that was a thing about where he knew that he was terminally ill, that it was something that, I know you said the leukemia, you know, made you think about this. And I had a small health scare at the end of the year, and I have to say, waiting for results and not knowing what they were going to be did make me think the what ifs for the first time, really.
Yeah, I think you come down right when everything, you sort of realise what's not important in life.
Yes.
And you sort of come back down to basics. I mean, when I think that all the things that I think, oh, I must get done, or, you know, every day you think you've got things to do. Well, I was away for weeks and nothing could be done. Things didn't fall apart, you know, like it's, you know, they were still there waiting when I come back. You know, I
have to say my house still hasn't been properly cleaned since before Christmas. I mean, it's been cleaned, but it hasn't been cleaned how I would clean it, because I haven't been able to, because I'm only just about allowed to move a Hoover.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the world hasn't fallen apart. There's a bit more fluff.
So you sort of realise you come down to what is really important and special to you. And I suppose it's like what's special to yourself. And those memories of your father-in-law must have meant a lot to him at some point.
Yeah, and it was I mean, there was other stories, and funnily enough, when the day that he passed away, his two of his sisters and one of his sister-in-laws phoned to speak to my husband, and they all had a story to tell me about him as a little boy, because he was very much the baby, because there was the oldest brother was practically a grown man by the time Ben and his younger sister were born, and their stories that they wanted to tell as well. Well, my husband didn't know them, and I made sure, as much as he perhaps didn't want to hear them then, I kept hold of them in my head because I knew that they would mean something to him. And I think when you lose somebody, or you're losing somebody, you've got a little bit more of them. And I think these life stories, just I mean, I've already decided I'm going to sit my mum down and say, right, tell me this. And she writes quite well. I mean, she says she doesn't, but she does. So
it's a little joint activity that you both sit there and do something together.
Yeah, and as well, her stories about her mum and her grandparents. I mean, I can remember my nans, but to be able to record those, just to keep. It's not necessarily, it does keep people alive though, doesn't it? And it's that connection as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
that connection, people enjoy. I think. Well, I'm not saying most people do. A lot of people do enjoy sharing.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to necessarily be a family member, like you said. These ladies who had the only thing they had in common, I say only, it was a huge thing that they all by chance had in common, that they were all recently widowed. I think it was sort of between 2 and 7 years or something, wasn't it? It was, but they found each other in this group, if you want to call that randomly, or you want to call that, some sort of, twist of fate. They had that in common, but their stories interested each other, didn't they? So it could be a friend that you're talking to about where they grew up, and especially if it's something different to yours, or it's something that's similar to yours. So I just wanted to ask you as well, different ways to record them, because obviously you said about putting them in, just writing them down, put them in a scrapbook, because you can buy books that are
we have so much choice now, don't we?
But do they leave a lot of room for things, you think? Or
I just want to show you something totally different. But
okay, Jenny's just said Terry Pratchett wrote, as long as a man's name is spoken, he lives on, and a story can keep a name alive for generations. Well, yeah, you do. We still talk about Shakespeare, don't we? We still talk about, well, I can't think of Aristotle and Socrates and Plato. That's who I was thinking of. The others are mathematicians. What have you got, Kay?
Yeah, I haven't got you can do photo books where you can put photos together. And something I recently had done on Facebook, which was available, was to have all your posts actually done in a passbook, but I had them just come as they came, and they've got the dates on them. So I mean, it can go back to when, there was me with no, like you see, I haven't got any hair there.
Oh, bless you. You're still smiling, Kay.
But, so it goes back all when I was at uni and my book, and that is for 5 years, and graduation when I graduated.
Oh, brilliant. Everyone has a graduation photo, don't they?
Last 5 years. So, I mean, but to me, I just had that from Facebook as it is. From this, I could sit down and write so many stories. And that's why I got it, actually, because
so is that going to be your random prompts?
Yeah.
That's Jen says that's something she fancies doing.
Yeah, I can, it's really nice quality, so it's something in itself. But for me to be able to do something random or to show people and say that is motivation or inspiration to
inspiration. And I know from doing palliative care, a lot of can you ask Kay what courses in uni she studied at? That's Jen.
I went to the University of Kent at Medway and did social sciences. So in the end, I focused mainly on social policy and sociology. particularly
Okay.
interested in the sociology of everyday life, which was what the sense of belonging really came under. And then I went and did a year at Kent in Canterbury, did a year of a master's, did a postgraduate certificate in the end, because we haven't gone back. I haven't gone back this year. So
Yeah. Ah, well, it's interesting because I know Jen was talking about doing a master's degree, because Jen's got 2 degrees, and she's talking about doing a master's degree. So that's why she's getting the lowdown there.
yeah.
And morning, Pat. But Pat is my friend's mum, and I did a funeral for Pat's husband's aunt, and she'd lived a relatively quiet life, but it was that was one of the first funerals I did, and I'm not going to say anything, Pat, that you wouldn't want me to say. And this lady she seemed very lovely, but she'd worked at tea rooms locally, and they'd had a sort of a famous guest who wasn't famous at the time, and I knew these details, and the guest who'd stayed there was actually Guy Gibson, who was the Dam Busters, from the Dam Busters. And when the family said, I won't give any details out, Pat, I promise, about it, they didn't know what the tea room was called, just what it was. So to try and find out what the tea room was, I ended up talking to a local historian, and he was able to tell me what the tea room was called. And he actually didn't know that this Guy Gibson, who was one of the main dam busters, had stayed there. So that was something for this village. He's written that down, and that's boosted their annals of history. And I was able to give this place a name, and it just felt, for me, filling in those little bits. But I love history, and I love writing and padding it all out. So that's why I do enjoy writing the eulogies. But it was lovely that I was able to find that and pass on something that probably might not have been recorded anywhere else, or might nobody else living, because this particular lady was she had a really long life, so possibly she's the only person left that knew that. You know, quite likely she was a young girl when she worked there, so I would imagine everybody older than her they'd have to be over 100 really to have known. So that's something that could have been lost, and it's just something, it's fascinating. And I've gone right off on a tangent there, Kay. I do apologise.
Well, you're not, because
I saw Pat's name pop up. It's your fault, Pat.
You're writing life stories all the time, aren't you? It's totally relevant.
Well, this is the thing. Pat's daughter is my friend from years ago, and I'm Pat's granddaughter's godmother. And then my husband is completely separately went to school with Pat's son, and they're best friends. And we've been in the same, you know, but there's so many stories where our families intertwine over the years. It's, you know, it's people from the outside, I think, well, what's all this? But when you look at it written down, and that my best friend, her mum and dad lived next door, but one to my mum and dad and to my nan. So you've got something like 6 different generations, you know. And like, if somebody looked at my my wedding certificate, they think, oh, that's the what you call it, the witness, she lived next door to her, you know, for nearly 40 years ago. Are they still friends? And it's that sort of, whereas if you've got the stories written down, people can see them. And that's right on a family history slant of things, which I could talk for hours about that. So
I mean, that's for the social research. The masters that I was doing was the methods in social research, and it's the social research that has now got me interested in social history. But I hated history at school. But now loving her social history.
So it's taken you so many places, this writing life stories. And, you know, like, I wouldn't say my life is anything extraordinary. I think people would say, oh, I think you have done some things that are extraordinary, but I think your own life is, because you're living it, it doesn't seem anything, unless obviously you're a mad adrenaline junkie and you're jumping off of mountains and that sort of thing. When you're just going on and doing your own thing, it seems as though it's day in, day out, but actually it's really interesting for other people, isn't it?
And it's the people you meet, isn't it? The stories you have.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got stories like to do with, I think, of places I've worked and the people I knew from that. I used to work
Yes.
for the group historian up in London, and that was a very special time for me.
Yeah, and the stories you could record from there.
Well, he was writing the history of BP, and he was meeting people all the time, telling their stories to him. So it's quite strange that that was when I was in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, a job I absolutely loved. And I feel as if that was a creation of a book, but he was
Let's come full
that.
circle. Maybe that put the seed in your head a long time ago, Kay.
Yeah, it's
And
quite
it might have been something you were always going to do.
Yeah, it's something I wrote in the beginning of my book, recognising that yeah, that experience back then, how that may have influenced me.
Yeah, and you know, definitely from writing eulogies, there are themes through people's lives that you think you've moved away from what you did and what you do, but there are themes that stay with people throughout their lives, whether that's 4 decades or 11, they stay. So before we sort of round up here, what would be your top tips on recording your life stories? If you can think of 3 top tips for me, what's Jenny saying? When you think of reality TV, they quite often have fairly mundane people on, but watching their stories evolve is fascinating. Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're just people. So
Yeah.
if someone's sitting here inspired today going, I'm going to write my life story, I'm going to start writing life stories, I want to record stuff, what would be your 3 top tips, Kay?
Do it for yourself.
Yep.
Be creative. Explore creativity, because
Okay.
creativity helps in the way in which you're thinking and gives yourself time to be you. And share your stories with others. Find ways to talk with other people about what you're doing. And that might seem strange things to say, but that's I suppose it's what I bring to what I do is different. And it's not until you experience it that you see actually how it works. It's trying to think different. And if you never draw, just have a go at doing a little picture of something that represents a story and see how you feel about it.
I quite like that idea, but then I wouldn't say I'm super artistic, but I could, you know, if I drew something, you'd have a fair idea of what it is. So, okay. Yep. So if people were interested in wanting to do a workshop with you, just because I know some people, you know, because are you doing them online this year?
I was going to do some, I'm happy to do, if I had people interested, then I'd put something online. I'm happy to offer.
Okay.
At this time, I'm happy to offer one for
so
everyone that's interested and do something free. You have people that come to you that are interested. So
if people are interested, I don't know. I mean, I know Jenny's. I think we're all going to be. I'm definitely interested. But I know you're part of the it's a free summit that's happening this weekend, isn't it? And what's your workshop there? Because that is free. I can put the link up later on.
It's how to be you when your life is disrupted.
Oh, okay.
But it's also
Ricky's saying he's interested. Jenny's saying I'm interested. How to be you when your life's disrupted.
Yeah, so that is about my book part. I'm bringing in a bit of reading about my book. It's about authenticity, and it is about doing things. It's a little bit about what you were saying about there are certain themes in people's lives, and it's thinking about your sense of belonging, the things you enjoy, and what makes you you. Who are you? You know, that sort of thing.
Wow, so, and that's something that identity is part of that story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or the story is part of the identity. They intertwine, don't they? And you know, living your life as you want to be is something that is, I think that's a skill, to be able to, I'm going to do this, I want to do that.
Well, I enable people through, I use the life wheel as a tool, and I use that in my writing workshops because
What's the life wheel?
It enables you to explore your life holistically, so all areas of your life, and to actually use a sort of scoring process, but actually it helps you to focus in, but also imagine your dreams with no limits, so overcoming limiting beliefs.
Wow.
So I get people to do a writing wheel, and you know, where they want to take their writing, what do they want to do with it, and how, and taking the small actions. So when you're talking about the 3 tips, I find it hard to give 3 tips.
Okay, 4 or 5, that's fine.
The reason is because we're all individuals, and therefore we're all unique, and people will find different things are useful to them. By doing the life wheel, that enables people to find the right way for them. So that's something I also do. I do life wheel workshops or writing workshops, but I'm most passionate about bringing the 2 together and do.
Wow.
Because it's for well-being. Writing is good for well-being.
Yes, definitely. And living your life well, because that's what well-being is, isn't it? Okay, so if people wanted to do that, where could they find you? How can they find you, Kay?
They can get with me on Facebook. I've got a happiness and empowerment page.
Are you happy to put it in after this in the thing?
Yeah. And I've got my Waves and Pebbles blog, but it's not an active, you know, I've still got all my posts on there. I occasionally post, but not so often. But that's another group that I've got that you can get me on. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you've got so Jenny says, I've been exploring inspiration this week, and Kay, you are massively inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing your journey today.
Thank you, Jenny.
Ricky says, thank you both for your wonderful inspiration this morning. I'm going to get writing today. I must scoot. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ricky. Thank you.
So he's had an interesting life, I can tell you. I've only known him for about 4 years, and he's reinvented himself twice in that. So he's an amazing character. So thank you very much, Kay. Hopefully that's inspired you for you know, to sit down and think about writing some stories about your life, or some writing and just living your life, really. So thank you very much, Kay, for joining us. Really appreciate that.
I just thank you for the opportunity, and thank the listeners, and
your
friend Pat, who came.
Suzanne says thank you.
Suzanne It's Suzanne there.
Suzanne Lydia, I'd say. And my
cousin. Hello, Suzanne. Yeah, lovely.
So we'll leave that there, and I'm back next week, and I'm going to be talking. I'm going to be talking about death planning, as in not necessarily planning your funerals, but about sort of ideas of. I'm going to talk about Swedish death clearing, which is something we spoke about the other day. So it'll be just me next week, I'm afraid. But I'll say goodbye for now. So thanks for dropping by, and thank you very much to Kay, our lovely guest.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.